Hi, I'm Sonia Jante.
I'm Jonathan Ward.
And I'm Kimberly Lane. And together we're Unlocking Leadership. We're three experienced executive coaches with very different disciplines. In every episode, we take a question from a real client and provide key insights to address their challenges from our three different perspectives. It's a holistic approach to understanding challenges and opportunities. So let's get to our first question. Our question today is from Irma in Savannah, Georgia. She says, I've always thrived on giving and receiving feedback. I've been moved into a role under an executive who says she is too busy to meet with me for regular check-ins. How can I tell if I'm meeting her expectations if she won't provide me with regular feedback? Jonathan, what do you think? Let's start.
Well, Irma, that's a great question. First of all, I congratulate you on priding yourself in giving and receiving feedback, because that's a great trait. As you're now finding out the experience in not getting that kind of feedback, it can be very, very frustrating to not be getting feedback on how well you're doing. You know, there's a real fine line between wanting feedback from your boss and coming across as too needy. That's what I hear a lot of times is from coaching clients is my boss says I'm too needy because I'm always asking for feedback. And on the other extreme from that is for me, there's really nothing worse than finding out after the fact or at the end of the year that you weren't meeting your boss's expectations. It's too late for you at that point to do anything. So I think it comes down to your question, how do I manage that? How do I not be too needy, but at the same time, make sure that I get that kind of corrective information? And so I think, it's helpful to let your boss know that that the feedback you're asking for is not just because I wanted a pat on the back to reassure me that I'm a good person. It's not that I have this kind of lack of confidence in myself, but I genuinely want to perform. But if the boss is truly telling you that they don't have time to give you that kind of feedback, you need to try to find other sources. I would suggest trying to find people like trusted allies, coworkers. If there's a champion or a mentor you have in the organization who can help give you a bigger picture and give you feedback in that direction, that can help you, I think, on your day-to-day performance, and also be thinking about the long term. And a strategy you might try with your boss is to ask her for specific examples of feedback rather than just saying, how am I doing in general? If your boss might say, everything's fine, don't bother me. You might think about after you've been to a meeting with your boss and a client, for example, and just say, what did you think about how that meeting went with our client? What did I do well in there? What might I have done differently? So asking for specifics sometimes might make it a little bit easier for your boss to give you feedback. How about you, Sonia? What do you think?
Yeah, I thought the same thing about the fact that, sometimes we have to take into consideration people's different styles and different approaches. And so if she's been conditioned to talk to people that are very open and potentially extroverts, and they're willing to share a lot about the feedback they have, for all we know, she may have a boss that's very different. Her boss may be more of an introvert. Her boss may be concerned about being able to make an evaluation too soon or too early, particularly if she's a new player. So I agree with you that it's something that she has to examine for herself as to, am I looking for feedback because I need this approval? And I'm not, I think of it as an opportunity for her to, if you will, mature in her ability to be responsible for her role and for what she's doing. If she's an expert at what she's doing, or she's very good at what she's doing, she probably has a really good way of assessing when she's making progress towards something. The only thing I would say is that potentially I agree with you, Jonathan, informing her boss that it isn't that she needs feedback continuously. She just wants to be able to know when she's going off course, or when there's something that she did that should be reproduced or duplicated through the group. So it becomes more of an opportunity for the boss to act on something that's constructive. And the other part is potentially letting her boss know that she's very good at accepting constructive feedback. Because sometimes the reason we won't get feedback is, I don't want to deflate them. I don't want to disappoint them. And if somebody says, no, that to me is like, manna from heaven. I love that. And I can go with that any minute of the day. Then the boss can be a little bit more relieved about that. Kimberly, what do you think?
There's several different ways that we could look at this, Irma. You know, it could be, as you mentioned, Sonia, that possibly, you know, the boss might be not really too busy. It's just that they're not really very comfortable in giving feedback. It's you know, especially if it's constructive criticism, if you will, and makes them very uncomfortable. So they will avoid it and therefore not give you any kind of feedback because she just doesn't want to put herself in that position. So that could be a scenario that's going on. Regardless, you do need to have some kind of feedback and kind of going and addressing what Jonathan and Sonia had mentioned, you know, looking at yourself, how much is it that you're just needing to kind of approval versus really striving for feedback. And if you are looking for just true feedback, can you set your own expectations of what you would think would be required in that job? One, by just sitting there constructively thinking about if you were in her shoes, what would be the expectations? Number two, were there others who have been reporting to her in the past that you could also speak to that might give you some insight into her personality or expectations, that when she says she wants things on time, it really means it's a day early, or she doesn't mind if it's a day late, or, you know, it maybe just who have other people that have worked with her or worked under her. And then the third option would possibly be HR might be able to give some insight just as her management style and some of her expectations. But regardless, if you are really seeking just that daily approval, really kind of, as Sonia had mentioned, an opportunity really for your own personal growth and to take pride in your work, and just assume if you're not getting feedback that you're doing it exceptionally well, and just kind of set the bar for yourself, set your own expectations on what you'd like to accomplish in that role, and kind of mark yourself against that on a regular basis, where I would probably start.
You know, I'm thinking one of the other things that feedback is helpful for is for your own career development. And if you can help your boss, perhaps let your boss know that you need this kind of specific feedback, that I want to try to develop in these particular areas for my continued growth within the organization. Again, that can help them be a little bit more targeted about the kind of feedback that you're looking for.
And then too, I don't know, is there somebody you can kind of do a lateral relationship, even from a mentor perspective, if your boss isn't really available from a time perspective or doesn't really want to get involved, you know? So maybe is there somebody else higher up in the organization, not necessarily above her, but just laterally, that you can ask to be a mentor in this situation, give you some constructive feedback on what you're doing for her.
Mm-hmm. You know, there was a group that I facilitated a meeting for, in which there was very diverse personalities and styles. And there was some people that wanted a lot more feedback, and there were some people that were like, hey, I'm good to go. And so I said, you know, maybe you guys can come up with like a 1-page form of what you consider to be essential skills or essential competencies that are needed for you guys to be effective in your specific role in the specific group. And then you can, if you will, from time to time, pass it around to different people so that you guys can, you know, assess, you know, am I an 8 or a 10 or a 5? And that might be a way for you guys to pair up so that you guys, somebody who's a 10 at something can definitely help somebody with a 5 and give them some suggestions. And it was just a suggestion that I had. They actually created a form about how they made decisions. And it actually really became, the document became the focus and not the relationships. And then everybody was striving to make that document be as comprehensive and as effective as possible. And actually the group, when a year later, when she was doing reviews, the leader was doing reviews, she goes, I can't believe how everybody just stepped up their game. And so then I said, well, what changed? And she said, you know, we created that form. Initially, you suggested it, but we decided to make it more into about how we make decisions, because we realized we all made a lot of decisions. And wow, when I look back, I realized that's something that we needed to do. So sometimes creating another approach, another tool provides a new focus in which then it's not just about you and me, but it's about the work.
Yeah, I guess I go back to thinking about, you've got to get the expectations out on the table. And if your boss is not going to give you regular feedback, at least give you the expectation. You know, I think about that. There's probably so many double negatives thrown in here, but, you know, you can't hold me accountable for failing to meet something that you never told me you wanted me to do.
You're right. There's a lot of double negatives. You're right. You're right. It's like, and and at the end of the day, potentially her boss is very busy at this time, but would be open to doing it in the future. She can qualify that as well.
Mhm.
But we're living in enough times of change, and we need to sort of potentially, we have to touch base. We have to go back to the mothership and understand like what's working and what's not, because circumstances are changing at such a rapid pace.
Yeah, and Irma, I find it hard to believe that you don't even at least have an annual performance review, if you will, right? Or an opportunity really where you have a one-on-one with her where you can really be clear about finding what those expectations are. And there should be mutual expectations to an extent too. You should be able to express that you would like to have a quarterly meeting on, the work you've been doing and the progress you've been doing. So I find that disappointing if you don't have that opportunity. Maybe that's something that you could request at a minimum.
Fantastic. Some great ideas, Sonia and Kimberly. Thank you very much. Well, and thank you, Irma from Savannah, Georgia, for your question today. We hope that you and our viewers and our listeners have a better understanding of how to know if you're meeting your boss's expectations and how to go about asking for some clarification. To our listeners, if you like the content we shared today, please like this episode and also share and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Unlocking Leadership-askthecoaches.com. We look forward to reading your reviews. You can also find Unlocking Leadership Ask the Coaches on Apple Podcasts or on your favorite podcast platform. If you have a leadership question or would like to reach out to our coaches, please email us at info@unlockingleadership-askthecoaches.com. We'd love to hear from you. So thank you for joining us today, and tune in next time to find the keys to unlocking your best leadership.